Welcome to the Just Ingredients podcast. I'm Cara Lynn, and here we talk all things nourishing to the mind, body, and soul. This is a place where you can find just good ingredients to life. Dr. Erin Ellis began her career working with her business degree in restaurant management, and although she enjoyed this line of work, she knew she was meant for more. In 2010, she was diagnosed with a rare form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at age 31. Receiving this diagnosis and kicking its butt gave her the drive, the motivation, and the determination to get out of her own way and become that doctor that she always wanted to be. Having had a cancer diagnosis at such a young age, her mission and passion now is to empower those to take control of their health. This diagnosis proved to her that life is too short to feel suboptimal, and given the right tools, your body has the innate ability to heal itself naturally. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, our guest is going to answer 3 questions that I get on Instagram or through this podcast so many times. I mean, multiple times a day. People are wondering about these topics, and so I'm excited to talk about these, but we'll talk about them in a minute. But welcome to the show, Dr. Ellis.
Thank you so much, Carlin, for having me. I'm super excited to be here and share some knowledge with you and the audience.
Well, thank you for being here, and I'm excited that you're here. We met a few months ago in person in Arizona, and I loved just chit-chatting with you, and you actually came to my event that I did there, and people were asking you all sorts of questions, and people loved talking to you, so I was like, oh, we've got to have her on the podcast. So that was fun meeting you. So for those that are just listening, though, and haven't met you, will you just tell them a little bit about yourself, your background, and what medicine you practice, things like that?
Yeah, so I have an interesting health story or journey in life, like, most people do. I didn't want to be a doctor. That was not my first career. I worked in the bars and restaurants and really in hospitality for most of my life, from the time that I was able to serve alcohol, really at age 18, I think, to up until medical school. And I always knew that I could do and be more, but I didn't really know what that was. I was just kind of going through the motions, going to school, had my degree at Arizona State University, Go Devils, with an undergrad in business and emphasis with Spanish, like not even anything close to what I'm doing today. I'm not even fluent in Spanish. But like I said, I always wanted to do and be more. And I had dreams of being a trauma room surgeon. So I kind of wanted to do something in the medical field, but then also realized that I did not want to be in school for a trillion more years. So I gave up on those dreams and then got the undergrad in ASU. Well, in 2010, my life got turned upside down when I was told I had cancer. I was 31 years old at the time, so this was 14 years ago. I'm aging myself. And I was diagnosed with a rare form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And the type of cancer I had was typically found in older men. I'm female and 31, so a young female, opposite of the norm for that, and accounted for only 2% of all non-Hodgkin's lymphomas. So super duper rare. And I have no clue, really to this day why this happened. Well, I'm getting to the root of it, but that's a whole other story. At that time, I had no idea why this was happening to me, but you know what? Life threw me a curveball and I had only one choice, and that was to beat it. And that's exactly what I did. I used my positive mindset and my strength and willpower to beat it. I really didn't have any other option in my mind. I was diagnosed on February 4th of 2010 and deemed cancer-free on July 16th of 2010. So just a little over 6 months of intense chemotherapy. I had 6 rounds of chemotherapy, a lot of test imaging, blood work, you name it, a lot of what I call poison in my body to, try and kill these cancer cells, but the treatment did its job. And throughout that journey, I really learned a lot about health and wellness, and my eyes became open to a different type of medicine, and that was naturopathic medicine. And I knew nothing about naturopathic medicine when I was diagnosed with cancer. If you're not familiar with lymphoma, it's a blood cancer, and it responds really, really well to chemotherapy. And I was in a lot of pain. I had a tumor by my bladder, so I was losing the ability to walk, or like my leg to really function because the tumor was compressing on some nerves in the leg. And when I was dripping my first round of chemotherapy, I was out of pain. I didn't have to take any more pain pills. And I don't like to take pills, but I was obviously in a state where I had to take some pharmaceuticals. But, people ask me to this day, like, would you have gone a naturopathic route had you known? And I said, I'm not entirely sure. I would have probably put the brakes on and tried to figure out why this was happening to me, which I'm doing now. But I truly believe that at that time, the chemotherapy really cured me and helped me, but it still didn't really address, why was I diagnosed at 31 with cancer in the first place? But anyways, I learned through a friend of a friend that about naturopathic medicine, and come to find out there was a school in Tempe, Arizona, which was about 15 minutes from where I was living at the time. And there's not naturopathic medical schools in every city, like there are community colleges or universities. I think there's maybe only 7 now. I think a couple have closed. So there's only 7 in the US and Canada. There's 2 in Canada, I believe. And there's 1 here in Arizona. And I said, all right, well, this is a sign. And she told me what she did. And I said, wait, there's like a different way for medicine. Like you could really get to the root of why things are going on and heal naturally and give your body like what it needs to heal, and that your body can really heal itself. Like I had no idea. Before I was diagnosed with cancer, I never ate vegetables. I thought water was boring. Like we don't know what we don't know, right? We're not taught these things in school. And it's through our own journeys that we learn, similar to your story and what you share on your platform. So I said, you know what? This is, I always wanted to do something in the medical field. So I said, I'm going to look into this. And my family thought I was nuts. Everyone thought I was nuts. They're like, you're going back to school. You're going to medical school at your age. And I said, hey, I'm still young. Age is just a number. Who cares? This is like my second chance at life, my second career, right? So I did. I had to go back and take a few prerequisites, but all the classes that I had taken pre-med at University of Arizona, I left that out. I went to U of A first before I realized that I wanted to be a Sun Devil. I had some pre-med classes and they actually transferred, and I only needed a couple more to get in. And so I entered naturopathic school in 2013 and graduated. I just hit my 7-year graduation date a couple days ago. So I've been in practice now for 7 years. And I left school wanting to help patients with cancer because that's what I went through. And I didn't want people to go through what I did. But then I really learned that there is a huge need for women's health. And I've learned over the last several years that women's healthcare truly is broken. And really the whole medical system is broken. But women are not getting the answers they deserve. They're being dismissed. They're being told that they're crazy or just depressed. They're given medication when they don't need it. They're not getting to the root, and they quite frankly deserve to feel their best. And it's just not fair that they're not getting the answer. So now I'm on a mission to really transform women's health. And I focus primarily on women's hormones, weight loss that has to deal with hormones, period problems, which we'll talk about, and just really getting people to restore their health so that they can feel their best selves. That's truly what I have a passion for.
I love that. I love, though, that you went through a hard time and then wanted to help others from what you've learned. I just think that's incredible. I love people that have something hard in life and then want to teach others the things that they've learned through their hard trials. So you are amazing. I love what you're doing. But like you said, I love the things that you're trying to teach women. And we're going to talk about those today. Like you said, I want to talk about PMS and hormones and adrenals and weight loss, all the things. But let's actually just start with weight loss. So when a patient comes to you wanting to lose weight, how do you approach this as a doctor?
Well, in my opinion, there's 3 components to weight loss. We've got diet, obviously plays a giant role. And it's not necessarily what you're eating. That's a huge component, but also how much are you eating and when you're eating. And then we've got exercise, which most everyone that's on a weight loss journey is doing. And then we've got hormones. So typically I see 2 out of the 3 in play. Diet and exercise are pretty good. And then we're looking at the hormone imbalance. And within that, we're looking at blood sugar, insulin, the obstacles to cure per se. And that could be a little bit of dietary things. Because again, we don't know what we don't know. And conventional medicine and traditional doctors, they don't have the hours of nutrition courses that we took as naturopathic doctors, even functional medicine doctors. They might have gotten, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 hours of nutrition. We got like months of nutrition. It was years of nutrition. We're constantly learning about nutrition because, as Hippocrates says, like your food is medicine. And if you give your body the nutrients, you can heal itself. But we're dealt with the standard American diet, and we're dealt with all of these, fad diets and get skinny quick things and all of this, which is not really getting to the root of why can't I lose weight. So those are the three areas that I'm always addressing, really, with any patient, regardless if they want to lose weight or not.
Okay, so I want to address the diet and exercise, but I really want to talk about the hormones because I think most people have the diet and exercise down. But let me just ask you really quick on diet. I always think it's two things. One, they're not getting enough protein. And two, they're eating like their carbs not with a protein or fat. And so the carbs are spiking their blood glucose levels to go up and down like a roller coaster. So would you agree those are the two things with diet?
Absolutely. The first one was protein. Well, we as women, I think, are conditioned from birth to eat carbohydrates. I feel like that is our favorite food group, and we just love carbohydrates. And a lot of it has to do with our hormones. But there's good carbs and there's bad carbs, and we need carbohydrates. We just don't need as much as we're getting. And I think a big thing too is being aware of how much you're eating. A lot of times women are like, oh, I don't eat a lot of carbs. And then when I go through a diet recall, I'm like, holy cow, did you know that's a carb? That's a carb. That's a carb. That's a carb. I'm like, have you ever just tracked it to see how many carbs you're eating or how many grams of carbohydrates you're eating a day? Because carbs, guess what? They're sugar. And if you don't have anything to stabilize it, like protein or even fiber, you're spiking your blood sugar, then crashing, spiking, crashing, spiking, crashing. Now your cells are becoming resistant to insulin. You're having insulin resistance, and now you're going to be storing a lot of the food that you're eating as fat, and you're not burning it like you should. And then that can tank your adrenals, that can tank your thyroid, that's not helping your hormones. And you're just in this like hamster wheel of, up and down of blood sugar spikes.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, okay, so that's the diet, but let's talk about hormones. So everybody's like, oh yeah, check your hormones to see if when you're having a hard time losing weight. So are we talking about like the progesterone estrogen ratio? Are we talking about the testosterone? What are we talking about when people just throw that out there?
All of it. So hormones include everything from your reproductive hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, to your thyroid. Your thyroid is a huge component in weight loss. And then we've also got cortisol, which is your adrenal hormone, another hormone. And then we have blood sugar. Insulin's a hormone pumped out by our pancreas. So hormones are all encompassing. And oftentimes, unless you're seeing a naturopathic doctor or a functional medicine doctor, you're only getting like a little piece of the puzzle. Or you are getting these hormones tested and told that everything's normal. Well, that's my favorite term. And I think I would be rich if someone paid me for every time I've heard the word normal, because normal does not equal optimal. And for reproductive hormones primarily, it really depends on where you are in your menstrual cycle to know if these are quote unquote normal. And in my 7 years of practice, and I've done hundreds, maybe even thousands of labs at this point, I quite honestly can truthfully say that I have never seen a normal initial lab hormone panel. Nothing, like there's always been something that's not optimal. And that's what we're looking at, is making sure that it is optimal, because guess what? When it is, you start losing weight, you start feeling better, and all of the things that you came to see me for improve.
Okay, getting your progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, things like that tested is though a totally different test than a cortisol test, for, let's say, correct?
Well, they can all be tested at the same time. Typically first morning. I always draw my labs no later than 10 a.m. I prefer no later than 9 a.m. Cortisol, most of your hormones are active first thing in the morning, and we don't want anything to interfere with hormones. So say you work out and then you get your labs tested, they're skewed. Say you eat and then you get your labs tested, they're skewed, because we got the blood sugar and the inflammation and all those things that can really affect the hormones. And cortisol specifically is best represented first thing in the morning. Same with your thyroid. So we definitely want to get those drawn first thing in the morning, and you can draw them all at the same time. But for women that are menstruating, I always recommend getting them tested on a, cycle day 19, 20, 21. So day 1 is the day you start your period. And then we draw about 19, 20 days later, it depends where you are in your menstrual cycle, usually 7 or how long your menstrual cycle is, or 7 to 10 days post ovulation, because that's the best representation for estrogen, progesterone. Progesterone is only elevated in the last half of the cycle. So if you drew it, on day 1 of your period, it's going to be pretty low. So it's not going to tell me really anything.
Okay, that's good to know. So people can just go to their doctor and get blood work and see what's going on with their hormones.
Yeah, but they have to ask. I just had a conversation on Facebook with someone about, so would my PCP be able to run hormones? I'm like, well, they should, but you're going to have to ask for it. Also, too, you might get some kickback. They're going to tell you that hormones don't mean anything. They're going to tell you that, well, you're in menopause, it's irrelevant. Or if you're on birth control, they're going to tell you it doesn't matter. I've heard a lot of doesn't matter. Yes, it does matter. Your hormones 100% matter. So to keep asking. And if your doctor won't do it, find another doctor that will, because there's plenty of us that will.
And so what is it about the hormones that make us have that stubborn weight that we can't lose? Is it too low of testosterone? Is it too low of estrogen? Is it a combination of things, or which ones are the big players?
Yeah. So with the reproductive hormones, it's mostly can be a combination of testosterone, typically lower. Women need testosterone as much as men, just not as much as men. And men, that is their primary hormone along with cortisol. So it's estimated that a woman in her 40s has about half the amount of testosterone that she did in her 20s. So as we age, it declines. Plus, if you're an active woman or working out, you really are going to struggle, building muscle if you don't have testosterone to back you. But if you're in this chronic state of stress and in a fight or flight mentality for a long period of time, your adrenals are going to be suffering, which is your cortisol response. And then your body's going to start pulling from other areas. I just saw this yesterday in a lab review. I said, you know what? I'm like, you've had a lot of stress in the last 6 months. I said, look at your testosterone. It's totally tanked. I said, but look at your adrenals. They're totally tanked. I'm like, your body's trying to compensate. Our body's smart. So it's going to start pulling from other areas that it sees things that it needs. And then now we also have more deficiency. So that's why it's important to look, at it all and see where the imbalances are and then provide it. Now, estrogen and progesterone are like the yin and the yang. Estrogen bloats us and causes us to retain water and makes us feel fluffy and yucky, and typically why we have midsection weight gain later on in life, whereas progesterone is the deflator. It's kind of like a diuretic. So we really want a good balance between the two. And typically I see a lot of estrogen, and that has a lot to do with our environment, and not enough progesterone. And that could be due to maybe we're hitting perimenopause, menopause, the ovaries aren't working as well. Maybe that's due to stress or conditions like PCOS or things where you don't have, proper ovulatory function.
Yeah, estrogen dominance is such a huge thing in this country, and I think it's mainly 2 reasons. One, all the endocrine disruptors that people are using in their body or their beauty products, and that's, increasing the estrogen. And then 2, like you said, the stress, because when we stress, the adrenals need to make the cortisol and progesterone, right? And so the cortisol, if it's making the cortisol due to our stress, it's sort of like stealing, I want to say in quotation marks, stealing from the progesterone being made. So then our estrogen skyrockets, correct?
Yes. So progesterone is produced primarily by the ovaries after ovulation. So if we ovulate, we make progesterone. When we're in menopause, we don't have ovarian function to produce any of our hormones. So our adrenals take over a little bit. You can get some production, but not, nearly any. We usually see, hormones in the toilet when we're in menopause, besides cortisol. It just depends. And that's why we do, can do hormone replacement therapy. But yeah, like you mentioned, your cortisol, if you're in stress, it's going to pull from there, and it's going to pull testosterone. It's going to pull progesterone to help try and fuel you. And then guess what? You want to choose more carbohydrates. So then your blood sugar increases and you increase more inflammation. And now you still have all this weight loss and inflammation in your body.
Yeah. Hormones are a great thing, but also such a hard thing. But let's actually talk about adrenals, because adrenals have so much to do with stress, and stress and adrenals have so much to do with weight gain or not being able to lose the weight. So
Yeah.
let's just start at the basics though with adrenals. So what are the adrenal glands and what is their role basically?
Yeah, so the adrenal glands are two little almond-shaped organs that sit on one on top of there's one on each of your kidneys. So they're located in your posterior part of your lower back. And the job is to pump out cortisol. And cortisol is our stress hormone. It's literally what gets us out of bed. And as I mentioned earlier, it should be higher in the morning and then lower as the day goes on. So it's kind of like a nice little roller coaster, like up, rises as soon as we wake, and then, gets high. And then as the day goes on, gets lower and lower and lower. Typically, I oftentimes see flipped cortisol response, where maybe we have like a higher morning cortisol. And if we have a higher morning cortisol, it might mean that we have an even higher nighttime cortisol when it should be lower. So that is like the chronic state, like fight or flight, go, 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 almost like a wired but tired feeling of adrenal response. But just like your pancreas and insulin, your pancreas can only pump out so much insulin and then it wears out. Your adrenals can only pump out so much cortisol, and then you're in this, adrenal fatigue, or, maybe you have a condition called Addison's, which is where your adrenals are just not producing cortisol and you have to, take some steroids. So yeah, and guess what the culprit is? Like you said, is stress. And who isn't stressed? I mean, that's the biggest factor in, I think, health. Like one of the most, I would say 90 to 95% of my patients, it's like, well, I can't fix that for you. You have to work on managing your stress, because look at what it's doing to your health, your hormones, and even the way you feel.
Yeah. So a few years back, I did not manage my stress. That's what I tell people. I tell people it's really hard to reduce your stress, but you can manage your stress. And so a few years back, I did not know how to manage it. And I gained 15 pounds. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, why am I gaining this weight? And it was due to the stress. And so I think it's something that we don't account for a lot of times when women are wanting to lose weight. It's like, well, how are you managing your stress? Are you in that fight or flight all day long? And so many of us are, because we're like hurrying and getting the kids ready for school and getting them off to school. Then we're running to work, and then the traffic is crazy, or there's some guy or some person on the road that we're mad at while we're driving. Then we run and get to work, and we've got some deadline. And I mean, it's that constant, like, we got to go, go, go. And so, okay, let's talk about the adrenals though with this. So if people are listening and are like, okay, yep, that's me. I'm stressing. I need to learn how to manage my stress. Are there common symptoms of the adrenals being like overtaxed? Will people feel certain ways or not necessarily?
Yes. So if you have a low amount of cortisol, maybe even high too, you're going to struggle to get out of bed no matter what. Say you sleep 7 to 9 hours and you feel like you sleep well. Maybe you do a tracker like an Oura Ring or something like that, and it says you sleep well, but you're like, man, I'm still exhausted. That's signs that we've got something going on with the adrenals. You're gaining weight, like you just said, that's stress fat. Cortisol increases inflammation and can cause us to pack on pounds. So that is another sign. Say you're crashing in the afternoon. That's another sign that maybe we didn't start off with the best amount of cortisol, or it's good in the morning and then you crash. And that's why it's helpful to look at 4-point salivary cortisol throughout the day if I really suspect someone's in some sort of adrenal dysfunction rather than just the first morning. But I would say fatigue is the biggest one, and then the weight gain would be secondary.
Okay, and also I learned during this time, so at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I would just crash, and I would want like some caffeine or something with energy. And I didn't realize that well, this was years ago. So before I got on this whole health journey, I just figured that was like a tired mom. That's what all moms felt. And as I asked my friends, they all were like, oh yeah, round 2 or 3, I've got to get a Diet Coke. I've got to get an energy drink or something. But in reality, that's your cortisol off, correct?
Yeah. So then we go to the root as to why. Why is it off? But yes, like you should have, no matter what age you are, the energy to do the things that you want to do all day long. And yes, we're going to have some bad days. give yourself grace when you're on your menstrual cycle. Your hormones are at their lowest. It's okay to feel a little tired. But if you're exhausted all day, every day, crashing in the afternoon, this is not normal. And don't let anyone tell you that it is. And it's not because you're a mom. So your symptoms are messages, and it's something like going on in your body that we need to address and figure out and give your body what it needs so that you can feel your best.
Okay, so I want to go back to the weight gain part with adrenals though. So people are gaining the weight because it's just producing, your adrenals are producing too much cortisol, and so that messes up your estrogen progesterone ratio. Is that why?
It can, but more so like the inflammation. So stress, or the stress increases our cortisol response, which is an inflammatory response, which can cause us to pack on the pounds. So, but then like if you have this high stress, so other things are going to compensate in the body. You could be pulling progesterone. Progesterone is very sensitive to stress. So if, I'm sure everyone here has had periods, or that's listening to your podcast knows that if you ever go back to a cycle where you're like, oh my gosh, I had a time in your life when you were super stressed, or maybe you went through a traumatic experience, maybe you had a death, and then all of a sudden your next period, or maybe the period after that, is off. It's because of a stress response that you put your body through, a few months prior, because now your progesterone might be a little bit lower because you burned through it due to a stress response. Now your cycle's either you skipped it, or maybe it came really soon, or whatever that, it could be variations with that. But yeah, they're all connected. Your thyroid, your adrenals, and your reproductive hormones, they're all connected on something called the HPA axis, or the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. So it starts in your brain and goes all the way down to the ovaries and or gonads, testes for the men.
So if people think they have adrenal dysfunction because they are tired, or they have a hard time waking up in the morning, they're gaining that weight, what do you suggest to them to do to help their adrenals?
Well, let's test it. I love to test and not guess, but if you're not in a place to have lab work done, I mean, you can start by really just becoming aware, like maybe a light bulb just went off from this conversation, like, oh, wow, I guess I am maybe more stressed than I thought. And then start doing things to manage the stress. And that's a tough one for a lot of people. There's doctors that will say, you need to meditate. You need to go outside and ground. And sometimes that doesn't work for the busy mind. So it doesn't have to be necessarily those things, but trying to incorporate something for you. And you need to be selfish. And moms are really hard at doing that, taking time for themselves and really prioritizing their own health, because they're so focused on their family and their husbands. And usually their health comes last. So locking yourself in the bathroom, reading a book or taking a bath, taking a car ride, listening to music, signing up for a class, something that, can help you manage your stress and really think about, the whatever's going on in your world. Maybe it is you need to reevaluate your job. Is it your job that's really sucking the life out of you? There are other careers, and if you're not happy where you are, I see this all the time. I'm like, my high performing women, I'm like, have you ever thought about maybe another job? I'm like, look at what it's doing to your health. You can start by working on diet. So breakfast truly really is the most important meal. And if we're not eating breakfast, we're not nourishing our adrenals. Also, if your breakfast is like super high in carbohydrates, it can drop your cortisol levels and increase your insulin, which will cause you to pack on pounds. So it's really important to start that day off with like a high protein breakfast, adjust ingredients, protein shake. Why not? Making sure that you really eat breakfast. It's truly important. And hydration is another big thing that's so easy to do and incorporate. And I know you talk a lot about dehydration, and most everyone is. I see it all the time in office. It's funny to me because I ask women or people in my office, I'm like, how much water do you drink a day? And they're like, oh, I drink a lot. And I'm like, define a lot. And they will say, oh, I drink, I don't know, one of those Costco bottled waters. And to them, that's a lot. And that is not a lot of water at all. That is, you're dehydrated. I actually gave a patient here that was extremely exhausted and running on fumes. She told me that exact same thing. And I ran to my fridge and I gave her a present of a bottle of water because I'm like, you need to drink this. Drink this by the time you go. You're a dried up little prune inside. You're dehydrated. But dehydration can raise your cortisol and impact your metabolism. So we start like then that whole spiral with your blood sugar again. We start using we make fructose from the glucose that we get from our food, and now we're storing it as fat. So hydration is so important to us. And, we live in a chronically dehydrated world. I was dehydrated when I was younger, when I was going through this, because I didn't know the importance of water. I was like, I'd rather drink a soda. Water's boring. It tastes like nothing. Like, why would I drink that? But you can make water fun. You have your electrolyte packets, which are delicious and clean. You can put fruit in there or whatever. It's just, I think pointing out these things and then becoming aware of what is going on in your own life is probably the first step in addressing any sort of imbalance in your body.
Well, if you ask most women, hey, if you are not dehydrated, will that help you lose weight? They'd probably be like, no, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And so that is a fun little tidbit for women to know, that your hydration levels matter. But you also touched upon breakfast really quick. And I want to say, though, you were talking about breakfast high in carbs. Well, again, that spikes the blood glucose levels, which increases your insulin levels, but it makes that roller coaster of blood glucose levels all day long, which is causing the inflammation in the body. And that inflammation contributes to the weight gain, correct?
Yep. So what happens when we eat food? Let's go back to like a little biochemistry. So we eat food, we make insulin. It signals our brain to make, or our pancreas to make the insulin. The insulin now comes and takes the glucose or the carbohydrates, the sugar that we get from our food, and should pull it into our cells for energy. But if we have too many carbohydrates and too much, our cells are now resisting it. And now the sugar is stored as fat, which can leave us feeling tired and even more hungry. So then our glucose increases and it triggers more insulin to be released. So it's kind of like you're knocking on the door, but nobody's responding. So you keep knocking and our cells just become more and more resistant. So now where does glucose go? Well, now it's going to travel down to our ovaries, which can impact our estrogen levels and increase it. Insulin also plays a role in testosterone, and that therefore can increase belly fat. So insulin plays a huge role in hormones, weight loss, energy, all of it. And insulin is one of those labs that's like not commonly tested, and you have to ask for it. It's not part of like your basic metabolic panel like fasting glucose is. It's a separate test. And I very rarely see that one, come to me on outside labs. I have to order it myself, but you want to be fasting for it. Right. So you don't want to have any food or even exercise. So if you're exercising before your lab work, like that most definitely can influence, because you're releasing even glucose from your cells that are already stored, glycogen stores.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our show sponsor. When it comes to nutrition supplements for women, one brand stands above the rest. It's Needed. And here's why. Pregnancy and postpartum are some of the most demanding times in a woman's life. Your health and your baby's health, both now and for years to come, depend on your nutrition. With thousands of options out there, how do you know which is the best? Over 4,000 practitioners recommend Needed's perinatal and women's health supplements. Needed offers premium supplements for every stage, from A-quality support for those trying to conceive to lactation support for breastfeeding moms, and stress and sleep support for all women, including those in perimenopause or menopause stages. Another great supplement I love that they offer for all women, especially those who are pregnant, is omega-3s. I love that these nutrients work synergistically to support optimal egg health and fertility in mama, and optimal brain, nerve, and eye in both mama and baby. You deserve to thrive, not just survive. Head over to thisisneeded.com and use code JIPodcast for an exclusive 20% off your first month of Needed product. Now back to the show. We've talked about stress playing a huge role with adrenals and the different hormones with the weight gain. But if stress is affecting the adrenals, then obviously sleep affects the adrenals.
So if we're not getting sleep, well, again, like, why are we not getting sleep is the question. Is it I can't fall asleep? Is it I'm falling asleep, but I wake up a lot? Or is it I'm too busy, I don't have time to sleep? Or is it I'm sleeping, but I don't get very good sleep? There's a lot of factors that go into sleep. But your body does its most fat burning between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So hopefully you want to be sleeping during these hours so that your body can do all of its repair and fat burning during that time. And if you're not sleeping enough, you're not allowing your body to get the adequate, restoration that it needs. And then when we talk about diet, moms are notoriously eating most of their calories at dinner because they're busy, go, go, go. They don't have time to eat. And then they're like, the day's over. The kids are home. I'm making dinner. I'm eating 2/3 of my calories at their last meal. And I see this often. And it's not, anything that anyone's doing wrong. It's just how your life is set up, right? But if you're eating a whole bunch of carbohydrates and a huge caloric, content before dinner, that's most definitely going to affect your quality of sleep and then stress your body out and not allow it to do its repair, recovery, rejuvenation, because all it's trying to do is digest your food. But also, if it's high carbs and not enough protein, you might have an insulin spike in the middle of the night, and that allows you, it's waking you up. So I just had this conversation with another patient earlier this week about that. I'm like, what are you eating before bed? Have you ever analyzed that? And it could be wine. It could be alcohol, because that's another thing that, a lot of moms like, is that's their reward. I'm going to relax and, chill with a glass of wine because the kids are in bed and my day's over. Nothing wrong with that. But have you ever paid attention to like, I wonder what it's like if I didn't do that? How is my sleep? Maybe if I cut that out, I might lose some inflammatory, weight and see some changes on the scale.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't think a lot of people realize, because you hear people all the time say, I wake up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. all the time. And you're saying that could be due to an insulin spike.
Yeah, it could be. Or it's typically between 1 and 3 a.m. If you're waking up notoriously during those times, it's your liver.
Interesting. Which, that's a whole nother topic.
Yep.
Because most people's livers are completely overburdened by all the toxins in this world.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay, but then also at that time of night, though, it could be cortisol issues, right? Like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning's cortisol issues.
Yep, and that could be spiked from the insulin and what you ate
or
drank. Yeah.
Right. Okay, it all goes hand in hand together.
It's all connected.
Okay, I'm curious because I actually love ashwagandha for stress. It's an adaptogen that has helped me for years. Yep. But I think it benefits the adrenals. Do you like ashwagandha? And are there other supplements you like for the adrenals?
Love ashwagandha. Huge fan of it. I love your adrenal complex because it has the adrenal, or it has the ashwagandha in it. I take ashwagandha by itself. Holy basil is another really good herb. We want to look for adaptogenic herbs. Adaptogens are adapting to stress. They're helping your body manage the stress. I also love B vitamins. B vitamins are super important for so many different things in the body, along with magnesium. Magnesium is involved in over 300 different processes in the body. So very supporting to even calming to the brain and the nervous system as well. But also doing a lot of behind the scenes things that you aren't even aware of. Vitamin C is really important for our adrenal glands. So there's so many things, but what I really want to make sure that everyone knows is that you can't out supplement stress. So I really want to focus on, why are you so stressed and what can you do to manage it? Is it saying no? Is it getting help? Is it really prioritizing yourself and then getting in that habit of taking care of you? Because it truly, your health is so important, and that's what we need to get to the root of. And we can't really out-medicate really anything. So just trying to get to, why are you so stressed and what can you, help to do to manage it?
Yeah, I love that you said that, because there are people that will come to me that are, eating Oreos and Pepsi all day long, but hoping that the ashwagandha is going to help them not be so stressed. And I'm like you said, supplements are to supplement, not be a miracle pill that, will help anything. So I'm glad you said that. And it's just one thing to help manage your stress, but you need to have multiple things. Okay, so I do want to move on to another topic, because another one that I get a lot from women is about PMS. And so because you deal with women all the time, let's talk about PMS. But first, let's just maybe explain what PMS and what causes it.
Well, it could be a myriad of things that are causing it. And honestly, what I've learned in the last probably 5 years since I've been out on my own in my own practice is we think it's normal because it's been normalized. And when I sit here and ask the symptoms like, oh, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have that? And women are like, oh, yeah, I do. And I'm like, do you know that that's not normal? So again, premenstrual syndrome is not normal. Your period should come and be a nuisance, really, just like, ugh, I have to wear a product or whatever, and maybe I'm feeling a little tired. But other than that, it should come and go and not cause any disruption to your life. So if you're having symptoms of painful periods, nausea, diarrhea, heavy periods, I love what you say. You feel like you're witchy hour, like you're a witch before your period, your mood, I think the bloating, like all of that, this is signs that we've got some sort of imbalance going on, and it's typically related to estrogen or progesterone. So that is the biggest thing I want to stress, is that so many women think that it's normalized or normal because it's normal for them too, or they know that it might not be normal. So they go to their doctor and say, oh, I have this, this, and this. And they're like, oh, that's normal. You're supposed to have those symptoms. Well, cramps should be tolerable. That's it. You should not be taking fistfuls of ibuprofen or Midol and have a heating pad and been in the fetal position and having to miss work. That is not normal. You should hear the stuff I hear in social media, and women are like, oh yeah, that's my life. I'm like, what? No, there's a reason why this is happening. Any symptom that you have is like your check engine light is going on. You need to get to the root of why it is. And it's not something that you have to deal with. And the thing about period health is, I don't know about you, but when I started my period, my mom told me that I was going to bleed from my vagina and that I needed a pad. And that was pretty much it. I knew nothing about anything else that was going to happen. I knew nothing about, maybe some symptoms, or really, is how much is too flow or too much of flow, or when does it come, like any of that. And again, you don't know what you don't know. And so that's why I love, teaching about menstrual cycles, because the period is such a beautiful process. And the hormones that are involved with the menstrual cycle in the female body, we can use our hormones to work for us, and we don't need them to work against us. And we've just been not taught and not given enough information, been dismissed. And it's just become this big normalized thing or an elephant in the room that nobody talks about. And so many women are suffering with PMS or PMDD and really just on a struggle bus and missing out on life and family activities because they're like, I can't go anywhere on the first or second day of my period. I'm like, excuse me? Like, that is not normal.
Yeah, I started speaking out more about this on my page when I realized my 17-year-old daughter, her friends were missing school like crazy. Every month, the first or second day of their cycle, they were in bed with terrible cramps. And I'm like, this is not normal. It should mine just like magically appears. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's that time. But what's crazy is sometimes if every, I don't know, few months or something, I'll get like a little bit of cramps and I'll say to myself like, oh, what did I do different this last month that I actually have some cramping or bloating? Because normally I don't. So I'm like, did I eat something different? Did I use some product that's different? So it's always like my body talking to me. So I love that it's our body communicating to us. But I'm curious, what is it that's causing the terrible cramps? Is it inflammation in the body? Is it the ratio of our hormones off? What is it?
Well, it's kind of everything that we talked about. It could be inflammation, but guess what drives that? Stress, blood sugar, poor diet, poor sleep. And then therefore we have a hormone imbalance. Maybe you're in perimenopause and the ovaries aren't as robust as they were in your childbearing years. And then the one other topic we've touched a little bit on is our environment. We have so many endocrine disruptors, and the endocrine system is the entire hormone system, your thyroid, your adrenals, your reproductive hormones. So there's so many different chemicals and toxins, pesticides, you name it, that are affecting our hormones every single day, every single minute. And again, it's kind of like this stress thing. We oftentimes can't avoid times of stress, just like we can't, it's literally impossible to live in a bubble. I wish we could, or live in a safe zone. Like, can we make a blue zone of, non-toxic state or whatever, because I would love to live there, but it's not there. We're not there yet. So we have to learn how to properly detox and choose products that are going to support our system, support our detox pathways, give us clean ingredients that we don't need to, worry about. Read labels, do your research. Don't believe everything that you read. Don't believe everything I say. It's like you have to be your own advocate and really try and ask yourself, like, why is this happening? Just like you said, it's okay and not uncommon to have a crappy period every once in a while, but don't beat yourself up over it. Like, look at what you did that month. Did you eat out a lot? Maybe you traveled. Maybe you went through a little bit added stress. There's a lot of things. As women, we're so sensitive. Our body is so sensitive to external factors, and that could be literally anything that we've talked about today.
Well, I'm glad you talked about the endocrine system and endocrine disruptors, because just the other day I met someone, I ran into her at the mall, and she was telling me the story that she used to work at Bath and Body Works. She worked there for 5 years and had the worst cramps, the worst periods, and she could not get pregnant. So she found my page, quit her job there. 2 years later of really cleaning up all her beauty supply one by one and changing things, she got pregnant and now has 2 kids and was so super excited, but her period was way different. And I'm like, yeah, those endocrine disruptors can really play a huge role in how you feel.
Oh my gosh. And they're everywhere.
Yeah, they
are. Everything.
They are, but that's why we can make better choices of products we use, because we do have control of some things.
Exactly. And there's a lot we can't control, but there's a lot that you can control.
Okay, I have a question for you about cramps, because for some reason, this seems to be the magic combo that I suggest to people, and they always come back and they're like, oh my gosh, it helped tremendously. So the combo is magnesium and omega-3s. And if their daughter takes those for like a month, 2 months, they always come back to me saying, oh my gosh, the cramps are so much better. So I'm assuming those two are bringing down the inflammation and calming that nervous system, correct?
Yep, they're natural anti-inflammatories. Magnesium, so this is a fun fact, and I don't know if you've mentioned this before, but why we crave chocolate during our period is because it's rich in magnesium, and magnesium can work on our pain receptors. So it's a huge, huge vitamin and nutrient for pain relief. And again, such an important nutrient, period. Most people are not deficient, but it's also a vitamin that I really haven't seen, insane levels of on labs, and I test everyone's magnesium levels. And then omega-3s are huge, and I see tons of omega-3 deficiency because of our standard American diet. Most omega-3s are found in cold water fish, nuts, seeds, things like that, which, yeah, you might eat on a sporadic basis, but you really have to be eating these foods all day, every day to really get the therapeutic level. And nobody's doing that, including myself. So that's why supplementing with these things is, can be helpful and not really harmful. But yeah, they're super, super anti-inflammatories. But then it still goes back to the question, like, why are we inflamed? Why do you have the cramps to begin with? Is it your diet? Is it, you have the endocrine disruptors? Is your liver not metabolizing your hormones because it's busy doing all the other things? Maybe you're having too much caffeine or too much sugar causing the inflammation. Is your stress? Maybe you're not sleeping. Like, it's all of the things that we talked about. So, but yeah, those 2 supplements are awesome for pain relief in general.
Well, and talking about that lifestyle that's so hard for teenage girls, because teenage girls are eating out a lot with their friends. They're eating sugary things at school. They're under stress at school. They aren't getting enough sleep as teenagers. And so I guess it really comes down to the parents teaching their teenagers about lifestyle factors and maybe helping provide more nutritious meals for them. I don't know. It's so hard for teenagers.
Exactly. And I think it's not their fault. They don't know. And you and I were both there as well, right? I think a lot of it's like, why can't we have more conversations about this in school? More classes about hormones, especially, as life and has evolved and the years have evolved, and we see all of this, increased risk of cancer and depression and anxiety. And we're just so quick to give the pills. And it's like, why can't we really focus on the root of what could be driving these things in the first place. And you don't know what you don't know. And we're not taught these things in school. So, I mean, it comes with you and I advocating on our platforms for it, that we can hopefully touch a mom that can tell their teen. But I would love to advocate more in schools and do more, talks to really educate, the young teens and population, because I don't think that, they're not always going to get it from their family, and they're definitely not going to get it in school.
Yeah, it does come down to educating. And I love that thought. I have to tell you something crazy. And this talks about the liver a little bit that you mentioned for PMS. I was in my 40s. This is how uneducated we are with teaching women about their menstrual cycle. Is I was in my 40s when I actually found out that we had to poop out the extra estrogen. I did not know that. And I was like, why don't we teach that? And I didn't even realize that all the stuff about the liver and how the liver has to, detox the estrogen and things like that. And I'm like, let's teach that to teenagers. You know what I mean? About how estrogen is really being used in the body, and that the liver plays a role in getting rid of that excess estrogen so that we aren't estrogen dominant with witchiness and terrible cramps and things like that. And so what do you suggest to people about their liver?
So fiber will help. Again, another food group that most Americans are under eating. Most Americans get about 10 to 15 grams of fiber a day, and we need upwards of like 25 to 30. Fiber binds to estrogen, so it will help your body metabolize it out, and then you poo it out. So we have 3 routes of excretion. We have poop, pee, and sweat. So you're going to excrete, metals and toxins and things through pee and sweat, and a lot of your hormones and some, bacteria and viruses and things like that through your poo, maybe parasites, hormones, things like that. So, cleaning up the diet, and then watching the endocrine, just taking less off the liver. Your liver's doing everything. It's filtering what you put on your body, in your body, around your body, the Wi-Fi, the EMFs, what you're inhaling, what you're eating, what you're taking as a supplement, and then your normal processes of hormone production, your thyroid conversion, like that's doing so much. So if you add all this exogenous stuff, even like alcohol and things that it has, it's taxing to the liver, just trying to give your liver a little break and nourish it and be gentle to it and say, hey, I'm going to take care of you because I think I need a little bit of support there in excretion because I'm just like a toxic cesspool of stuff that I need to get out. So yeah, poop can tell us a lot about your health. Your poop matters. It really does. It's not a fun conversation, but if you're not pooping daily, that's what we need to fix.
We've talked about so much. So the weight loss, the adrenals and stress and period issues and PMS. And so some people might be really overwhelmed with listening to this conversation. And so if someone is just starting or wants to, maybe fix their hormones or lose a little weight or fix their PMS, where do you even suggest that they start?
I would start with the awareness. I think that's the first biggest piece, is that we just aren't in tune with our own bodies. Asking ourselves questions like, okay, I have a headache today. Why would I might have a headache? Is it because of, I had a really sugary drink this morning, or maybe I didn't get enough sleep last night. Okay, why didn't I get enough sleep? I think awareness is key, and we've lost touch with our own selves. And I think that's the first step, is really trying to tune into your own body. And then you can start tracking things. I love writing down symptoms, especially when it comes to PMS or weight or any of that. It's like, all right, well, I feel bloated today, but I don't feel bloated, 3 days ago. Why would I be bloated today? Is it due to where I am in my menstrual cycle? Or maybe it's what I ate recently. But if you start tracking and writing things down, then you can start seeing trends in these nuances, and we can easily pinpoint where things are happening. So I think the awareness and just being more in tune with ourselves is such an easy thing to do, and we often don't do it. So that's the first place I would start.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. We really need to listen to what our body is saying, because I tell people all the time, the body can't speak to us verbally with words, but it speaks to us on a daily basis with symptoms, but yet we just ignore it. And it's trying to tell us something. So I love that advice. Well, we have just barely scratched the surface level of so many topics that we could talk about, especially on women's health. we'll just have to have you back for another one because I'm sure people are like, wait, you didn't ask this or this. But I love following you on social media. And so why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Yes, I love social media. I have connected with so many people. Like, that's how we connected. I found your account and was just obsessed with you and your story and your brand and everything about it. So social media is my jam. I'm on Instagram at dr.erinellis, on TikTok. I have my own podcast, Hope Natural Health. Hopefully you can be a guest on my podcast sharing your story.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah. And again, my website, drerinellis.com or hopenaturalhealth.com.
And you still see patients, correct?
I do. Yeah. I have a full day today. I do one-to-one care in the office. I can help virtually, but I'm only licensed in the state of Arizona. So I'm more of like a wellness consultant, but I have a lot of free content and information. And I can provide support. I have a menstrual cycle nutrition guide. That's a freebie for you. If you go to detox.drerinellis.com, you can download that, and that can help support your menstrual cycle just by working on your nutrition, but also too, like nutrition as a whole, if you don't really know where to start with, cleaning up the diet.
Oh, we should have talked about that and all the nutrition that you think is important during the menstrual cycle. We should have touched upon that.
That's our next podcast.
Our next one. Well, go give her a follow, you guys, because I promise you will learn a lot. Like I said, I love following her. And yes, I love that we connected over Instagram. Social media, gets a bad rap, but actually I've met a lot of great people over social media.
Oh gosh.
And so, yeah, I just have loved meeting you. So I always end my podcast with asking my guests what they have found to be the best ingredient in life. What would you say it is?
I knew you were going to ask me this, and because I listened to your podcast and like she asked, and I asked the same question to all my guests too. But my best ingredient is fun. And I can't tell you how many times I have asked patients in my office, when was the last time you had fun? And they sat there and stared at me with a blank face. And
Wow.
It's really sad. Yeah. And it's not necessarily like what your family wants to do. It's what you want to do. And I think we need to have more fun in our lives. We are so busy. We're so focused on getting things done and getting here and getting there that we just really forget to have fun. And it doesn't have to be like extravagant, activities or vacations. It could be a simple hobby. Whatever it is that is fun for you, I challenge you to get, 10, 15, 30 minutes of it a day to really nourish your soul. I think that's my best ingredient for life. It's really going to make a huge difference in the way you feel.
I love that. I don't know if anyone has said fun before. And as you were talking, I was like, yeah, what is the last thing that I've done that's been fun? I mean, I actually feel like I don't have a problem with that. I enjoy a lot of things every day.
Right.
So, but I do know that is an issue for people. So,
but
I was
huge.
just thinking what was the last thing that I did that was fun?
Yeah.
But maybe sometimes for people, because maybe saying they need to do something fun every day for 10, 15 minutes might get overwhelming to them. And so maybe it's that they have a fun trip plan coming up, or they have a fun activity for the weekend coming up, or, maybe it's a once a week thing if they needs be, or, so we don't want people to stress out about that.
No. And that's just being aware. Like, when was the last time you did have fun, and then trying to do more fun? And it could be anything from listening to a podcast. Like, that could be fun for you. It could be coloring in an adult color book. It could be gardening, whatever it is. I just sparked to like do cross stitch again. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had so much fun when I did that when I was younger. I'm like, oh, I should try and do that again. That's fun. Just anything that can take your brain away from normal day-to-day processes is what, is the goal for the day.
I love that. I find fun every morning by going to the gym with friends. I think if I didn't go with friends, it would be boring and I wouldn't like it.
Yeah.
But I do like going with friends. So that was great advice. I love that ingredient. So again, thank you so much for being here. I know the listeners have learned a lot from listening to you today. So thank you for everything that you're doing out there trying to help women feel better. I just highly respect people that are doing that. And so thank you for what you're doing and for being here.
Oh, thank you, Carlin. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening. Remember to subscribe to the Just Ingredients podcast to learn more about your health and good ingredients to life. Plus, get daily tips at just.ingredients on Instagram.